Hey everyone, I wanted to make a tutorial on how to recreate Celeste's hair movement because recently I was in a game jam and that was one of the mechanics I wanted to add and I couldn't find a good tutorial for it, so I had to recreate it. And here's an example on how the hair will look. Alright, I have a very basic scene set up. I have simple player movement, move around, jump, and there's platforms to hop onto. Alright, and we could get started with the tutorial. So, add a new C# script, call it hair part. Alright, and now we're going to add a few variables. We're going to add a transform, call it target, a boolean, call it main hair part, and set that default to false. Add a lerp speed, set that to 5, and a max distance, set that to 0.5. A gravity, set that to -0.1. And a few private variables. One's going to be for my player movement. This is just my player movement script name. You could change yours to whatever your script name is for your movement, but I'm going to set that to mine. Add another private called ready and default that to false. Alright, to explain what these variables mean, the target is the transform the hair part will follow. I'll explain what the main hair part boolean does later. The lerp speed is the speed in which the hair part moves to its new position. The max distance is the max distance which the hair part can move, and the gravity is the gravity of the hair part. Right, now we can get started on adding the main functionality. So we could delete the start method. We don't need that. And for the update method, I want to check if it's not ready, then return. Again, I'll come back to that and explain what it is exactly. I want to get the transform position and set it to a new vector 3, where the transform position with the transform's current x position, the current y position plus the gravity, and the position.z of the current transform. And all this is doing is basically applying gravity. So we want to make a new vector 2, call it difference, set that equal to the position minus the target position. Another vector 2, call it direction, set that equal to the difference normalized, and a distance variable, which I'll just call dist. Set that to the math minimum of max distance and difference.magnitude. And what this is doing is returning the distance to multiply the vector by. So if the vector's outside the max distance radius, it'll return the max distance. And if it's below, it'll return the current magnitude. Next, we want a final position, which we could cast to a vector 2 for the target position plus direction times distance. And this is just getting the final position back from all the math we did. Now we want to create a new vector 2 of new position lerped. Set that to vector 2, vector 2.lerp of the final position to the target position, target.position, with the time being time.delta time times the lerp speed. And then finally, we want to set the position of the current hair part to the new lerp position. And let's go back to the scene editor really quick. So we want to get our player, add a new transform to the player, and this is going to be the hair anchor. And place the anchor wherever you want the hair to start. And right now I have a very simple sprites that I made, for the hair, just going from biggest to smallest. And the hair anchor, add a sprite component to it, sprite render. I'm gonna add the biggest hair shape to it. And we want to create the actual hair. So create a new object, call it hair, 0 the position, or actually I'll put it put it like up here. And then create new hair parts for that object. I'm just gonna create one, give it a sprite render, this, and add the hair part script to it. We just want to duplicate that out. You could offset it, the position will get reset. Just to visualize it, you could just offset it. So I'll name this hair part 1, part 2. Now I'll change the sprites, so it'll get gradually smaller. Hair part 3. So get smaller and smaller. This one should be set to this one to this one. Right? And you want to go to each of the scripts and set the parent to the parent of that. So for 3, set the parent to 2, 2, set the parent to 1, and 1, set the parent to the hair part 1. This is the hair part 0. Hair part 3, set it to 2, 2 to 1, and 1 to 0. And then for the 0 hair part, you want to activate the main hair part boolean, and you don't need to worry about the transform. Next, you want to grab the hair and move it to make it a prefab, and then you could delete it. So the reason we're making it a prefab is to avoid the problem of creating a new hair and dragging it into the scene every time and setting the parent to the player's hair. So if you want to create a new scene, you're going to have to drag the hair in, set the parent to the player hair parent, and that's just going to be a whole mess. So it's easier to make a prefab and instantiate the hair every time the player spawns, just to make it simpler. So next, we're going to actually create the script for spawning the hair, which I'm going to do in my player movement script. So I have 2 regions here of the movement. I have the basic movement here, and the code that controls the flipping of the player. I'll just minimize that for now. And we want to create a few new variables. I'm just creating a header to keep it organized. First of all, create the transform, which will hold the main anchor for the hair. I'll just call it hair anchor. And then create the game object of the hair, which we will instantiate later. Next, we want to make a delegate, and I'll explain that in just a second. Call this hair delegate. And if you don't know what a delegate is, it's basically a callback. So you could create a callback and invoke it to run a script from another script, basically. Just makes it easier so we don't have to set variables all the time. And I'll give the delegate void a new variable to pass through, which we'll call new gravity. And we're going to be passing the variable of gravity from the player to the hair in case we want to change it. Create a new delegate, hair delegate that we just made, and call it hair gravity. All right, we have that. And next we want to actually create the hair. So create a new function. Actually, I'll make that private. Call create hair. Make a local game object and instantiate the hair through that game object. And we want to do a for each transform of transform child in the object we instantiated transform. So this will cycle through every single transform of the spawned hair and go child by child. And what we want to do is get the component of hair part, and we want to do initialize hair. And we haven't actually made this function yet, so let's go back and do that. So here, we'll make that variable, void initialize hair. We'll pass two variables into it. First of all, the movement script that you have, we'll just call that movement, and the main hair anchor. And what we want to do is set the movement to the movement we passed in. Let's say if it is the main hair part, and set the target to the hair anchor. And this is why we created our main hair part boolean. It's so that the hair part at the top of the chain doesn't have access to the hair anchor because it's in a prefab. So we're just setting it in the script to the hair anchor. Want to get the delegate we created of hair gravity and set it to a local function we have here. Call it gravity, which we haven't set up either. So let's do that really quick. And what this is going to do, we're just going to create this really quick called set gravity. And set the gravity to the new gravity we pass in. And what this does is just a function to set the gravity of the hair to the new gravity, which we will set to the movement delegate right here. We're gonna assign that to the local function we have here and pass in the gravity. And then we want to do ready equals true to make sure to let it know that it's ready. Another thing we want to do is do private void on destroy. And make sure to unbind that delegate. If I could get this to work. Oh yeah, it's set to player movement. Set this to player movement. Air gravity minus equals set gravity, and that will unbind the delegate from it. Unbind the callback. And that should be it for the hair part again. Now we could go back to the player. And while creating the hair, we pass in this script for the player movement script and the hair anchor for the hair anchor. And we make sure that function's correctly named. And then, so the whole point of adding these callbacks and implementing it into the hair parts is so we could change the gravity of the hair at runtime, and that will just make it look a lot better. So here in the update, let's just do a basic example. So if I'm grounded, get the hair gravity callback. Make sure it's a valid function with the question mark, and then invoke it. And we want to invoke it with a value of -0.1, which is the default value. And then if we're not grounded, we want to give it a lower value so our hair has less gravity when we're jumping. And we could set that to -0.25. And that's just the basic hair gravity we could add in our movement script. You could get more advanced with it, but that should be pretty simple for now. And then for our player, make sure we set the values. So for the hair anchor, set it to the hair anchor we made. The hair, set it to the hair we made. And let's test it out. There we go. Seems to be working, but I think I made the hair a bit too long, which you could play around with the values. Okay, so I found this little bug here where the last hair part is behind an object, just making it look a bit weird. This is just specific to my project only, but you could select all the hair parts and put them in front in order and layer. There we go. That's looking a bit better. And the hair values I decided on is the last one, being 0.4, 0.3, 0.4 again. And in my opinion, it looks pretty good. Alright, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, just put it in the comments and I'll try to answer to the best of my ability.